Yo, hold up. 50 Cent just pulled the pin on a nuclear grenade and rolled it straight into the Combs family living room. Curtis just teased that what y'all already saw was barely a crumb of what he's actually sitting on, and now is hinting the next chapter ain't even about Pops no more. It's about the Sons. And did his kids really thought dropping their own little Zeus network sob story was gonna save them? Brew, they just walked into the lion's mouth holding a steak. Yo, tap in real quick. You do not want to miss this. Alright, before we crack this whole thing wide open, let me lay down the skeleton, the bare-bones timeline of what just popped off, because you need this context to understand why what's about to happen is gonna be one of the biggest cultural collisions in modern hip-hop history. Curtis 50 Cent Jackson. Yeah, the same man who's been clowning, roasting, exposing, and surgically dismantling Sean Diddy Combs publicly for over 20 years straight, just dropped his long-anticipated docuseries titled Sean Combs, The Reckoning on Netflix back in December of 2025, and the moment that joint hit the streaming platform, the entire culture stopped breathing for a second according to Netflix told him. And before the dust could even settle on season 1, before the think pieces could finish writing themselves, before Diddy's own legal team could even draft their first response, Curtis came back on his social media and casually teased a whole second season, this time with the spotlight aimed directly at Justin and Christian Combs, the two sons who've been front and center defending Pops through every chapter of this nightmare. Now here's where the story takes a turn that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming. Right after 50 dropped that bombshell tease about Season 2, Justin Combs and Christian King Combs himself ran out and announced their OWN counter-documentary, this time on the Zeus network, scheduled to drop in 2026, and they had the audacity to include a literal prison phone call from Fort Dix, yeah, from Pops himself, built directly into the promotional rollout as reported by Forbes. Bro, when I first saw that announcement, my jaw was on the floor for legit 30 seconds, because the Combs camp really thought this was the move. They really thought putting a federal correctional voiceover into a trailer was gonna swing the public back to their corner? Nah, fam. Absolutely not. This is the kind of strategic miscalculation that historians are gonna study one day. Because what we're watching unfold in real time isn't just a celebrity beef. This isn't just two camps trading shots on Instagram. This is a full-blown war for narrative control during an active federal appeal, and the side that's losing the war is making moves so reckless, so transparent, so easy to read. It's like watching a chess player flip the entire board over because they are 3 moves away from checkmate. Now let's pull back the curtain, walk through the receipts one by one, and show you exactly why this counter-documentary is about to blow up in the Combs family's face like a stick of dynamite duct taped to a microphone. Alright, you'll know how I do this. Before any analysis, before any wild speculation, before I even think about giving you my take, we stack the receipts. Quotes only. Documented. Verified. No spin, no filler, no shaky claims. Because in this culture, your opinion only matters as much as the evidence behind it, and I'm bringing the evidence in bulk today. So strap in. Receipt number 1. The very moment Zeus Network pushed out that explosive trailer for the Combs Sons docuseries on December 28, 2025, the internet damn near cracked in half. The trailer itself opens with Justin Combs sitting on a couch, calmly clicking on a television that's already queued up with trial footage, and a chilling, cinematic voiceover starts playing. And this is a direct quote: "The foes, the joy, the pain, our loyalty, the betrayal, the mind, the love, the hate, the truth, the lies." Then, as if that wasn't dramatic enough, the trailer cuts hard into a literal prison phone recording where you hear an automated voice say, "This is a prepaid collect call from Federal Correctional Institution Fort Dix," according to TMZ. Bro, when I heard that prison call drop into the promo, I had to rewind it not once, not twice, but 3 separate times to make sure my ears weren't lying to me. They put Pops' prison voice into the marketing rollout like it was a feature single off a debut album. I'm telling y'all right now, that's the dumbest flex I've ever witnessed in my entire life of watching hip-hop politics. Receipt number 2. Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, being the surgical assassin he's always been, reacted on Instagram literally within hours of the trailer dropping. And his exact words were these: "Wow, I want to see this show. I'm not sure this was a good idea." And he tagged it 50 Cent Action on the post, so the entire culture knew this was him personally pulling the trigger, and not some PR flunky according to Hot 97. Real talk, when I read that response, I had to lean back in my chair and just nod, because that's classic Curtis right there. Cold, calculated, surgical, dripping with that signature sarcasm where every syllable feels like a scalpel sliding between somebody's ribs. He didn't even have to throw a real punch. He just smiled, pointed at the disaster, and let the rest of the world realize what they were actually looking at. That's a man who understands public destruction the way most people understand brushing their teeth. Receipt number 3. The Zeus Network CEO himself, Lemuel Plummer, and you'll need to remember this name because it's gonna come up a lot, got hit with so much public backlash within 24 hours of the trailer dropping that he had to scramble to put out a damage control statement that read almost like it was written by a frightened intern at 3 in the morning. His official statement said, and I quote, "To be clear, this documentary series is centered on providing Justin and Christian the opportunity to share their personal story and lived experiences. This project is not intended to endorse, defend, or vindicate Diddy or any individual, nor does it seek to justify or minimize any action that has been alleged or adjudicated according to hot new hip-hop." Bro said what? Hold on. Let me get this straight. You drop a trailer absolutely drenched in Fort Dix prison call audio. You cinematically frame the words of truth, the lies like it's a Christopher Nolan movie. And then you want to look the camera dead in the eye and tell me with a straight face that this project is not meant to defend Diddy in any way? Nah, my guy. You can't sell that contradiction to a kindergartner, let alone the millions of people who've been following this case for the past 3 years. Receipt number 4. While all of this media circus was happening on the surface, Diddy's actual legal team was busy filing a formal appeal asking the Second Circuit Court of Appeals to either toss his entire conviction or significantly reduce his 50-month sentence. And his lawyer literally, and I'm not making this up, called the sentencing a perversion of justice and tried to argue in legal filings that the freak-offs themselves were protected by the First Amendment according to Yahoo News. When I read that section of the filing, I had to put my phone down, walk out of the room, take a lap around the block, drink a glass of water, and come back. Because I needed a moment to absorb the audacity. Is he serious right now? You're telling a federal appeals court that the freak-offs, the same freak-offs that became core evidence in his prosecution, were a constitutionally protected form of expression? That's not a legal argument. That's a Hail Mary thrown from your own end zone with 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, down by 40. That's where his lawyers absolutely lost the plot. Receipt number 5. And this one right here is the kicker that nobody saw coming. During his sit-down interview with the legendary Robin Roberts, 50 Cent personally confirmed on camera that Netflix only used a tiny sliver of the material he actually has, with multiple reports stating that Curtis is sitting on roughly 140 hours of completely unseen, raw, behind-the-scenes Diddy footage according to EURube. Bro confirmed this with his own mouth on a major network, in front of one of the most respected journalists alive. When I heard that number, 140 hours, my jaw was somewhere between the basement and the center of the earth. That's not a documentary anymore, fam. That's a federal exhibit waiting to be subpoenaed. That's a treasure chest of hand grenades sitting in Curtis's closet, and every day Diddy and his sons keep talking, one of those pins gets a little looser. So now that we've stacked the primary quotes, let's connect the dots that the mainstream press is tiptoeing around. Alright, this is where the wheels start coming flying off the wagon, because nobody in mainstream media is putting these dates together in proper sequence, but I'm about to do it for you right now, plain as day, so you can see the strategy collapsing in real time. Check the timeline carefully. Sean Diddy Combs reported to Federal Correctional Institution Fort Dix and got his appeal officially fast-tracked back in early November of 2025 according to iHeart. Then 50 Cent's Netflix joint, The Reckoning, officially dropped on December 9, 2025 as confirmed by Netflix Tudum. Then, and this is where the whole strategy falls apart, less than 3 weeks later, on December 28, 2025, the Combs sons rushed out their counter-trailer on Zeus Network. Bro, 3 weeks. That is not coincidence. That's not creative timing. That's not artistic planning. That is a panic button being slammed so hard the wall is cracking around it. When you reverse engineer those dates, you can literally see a war room scrambling to respond. Now zoom out and look at the bigger frame. Remember the trailer? It dropped while Diddy is actively in the middle of an appeals process, meaning every single frame, every single soundbite, Every single carefully edited transition can and probably will be used by federal prosecutors as evidence of a coordinated public manipulation campaign. That post went up while Pops is sitting behind bars at Fort Dix, trying to convince a federal appellate judge that he's somehow rehabilitated, somehow remorseful, somehow not the same man the jury convicted. You really thought the U.S. Attorney's Office wasn't gonna connect those dots? You really thought they weren't gonna print out screenshots of that trailer and walk them right into the courtroom? That's some next-level naivety. Brew. Now here's the behind-the-scenes piece that almost nobody is talking about. Lemuel Plummer, the Zeus Network CEO greenlighting all of this content, isn't some neutral journalist sitting in a glass tower. He's not Anderson Cooper. He's not even Roland Martin. Plummer has been a personal friend of Sean Combs for years, which is exactly why people lit up his Instagram comments within hours, calling this whole project a glorified PR spin job dressed in documentary clothing according to hot new hip-hop. So you got the homie producing the documentary. You got the Sons starring in the documentary. And you got Pops phoning in his lines from a federal prison. That's not journalism, my guy. That's not a documentary. That's a family huddle with cameras pointed at it, edited for streaming. Then there's the courthouse pattern, and this one is critical. Federal prosecutors literally laid this exact behavior out during the criminal trial. They alleged that Combs was running a coordinated social media campaign from behind bars, even using something as innocent-looking as a happy birthday post to engineer audience engagement and potentially sway public opinion, which can leak into the jury pool according to NBC News. Then there was that whole free puff t-shirt circus that played out in real time outside the Manhattan Federal Courthouse, where multiple bystanders later told reporters they were offered approximately $20 an hour to put on those shirts and stand in front of cameras. The whole thing turned out to look almost exactly like a paid AstroTurf protest according to Hollywood Reporter. So the man's already got a verified, documented, paper-trailed history of buying public sympathy through cash incentives. And now the Sons are doing a whole documentary in 2026? That's not a fresh strategy. That's the next page in the same tired playbook. And let's not forget, Christian and Justin already pulled the courtroom t-shirt move themselves. They walked into a federal trial wearing free Sean Combs shirts directly in front of a sitting jury during witness testimony according to TMZ. They did this days into a federal proceeding where jury influence was already a flashing red issue that the prosecution had specifically raised. That, my friends, is terrible strategy. That is the move of a family that does not have any real, qualified, sober-minded legal advisors. That is the move of a family whose decisions are being dictated by a man literally calling shots from the inside of a prison phone booth. But wait, because here's where it actually gets more interesting. Now check this out. Because nobody, and I mean nobody in mainstream press, is talking about the actual wording, framing, and visual symbolism inside that Zeus trailer. So I'm gonna go forensic on you for a minute. Pay attention. Zoom in on one specific phrase from that voiceover, the truth, the lies. Why those two words back to back? Why are they delivered in that particular cadence, with that particular weight? That right there is not storytelling, fam. That is framing. The Combs Sons aren't presenting a story to the audience. They are preloading your brain to believe that everything that happened in the federal trial was a 50-50 maybe, a question mark, an unresolved coin flip. Which means before you've even watched a single frame of the actual documentary, your subconscious has been told that there are two equally valid sides to a federal conviction. And, Diddy really thought viewers wouldn't catch that subliminal manipulation? My guy, the audience is smarter than you think. That's embarrassing. Now zoom in on Justin's gesture in the opening shot, sitting on a couch, casually flicking on the television with trial footage already queued up and ready to play. That's not random. That's not directionless. That's not just B-roll. That ONE motion is loaded with symbolism. It's literally telling the audience, we're the ones in control of the narrative now. We decide what plays on the screen. We decide what you see. We decide what gets shown. If Justin had even half a brain in his skull at the moment of filming, he would have realized that single move actually reinforces the prosecution's entire argument that the Combs family is engineering public perception from outside the prison walls. He flipped on the TV, and at the same exact moment, he accidentally flipped his own evidence onto the prosecution's desk. Now decode the placement of the prison call. They used Diddy's actual voice. This is a prepaid collect call from Federal Correctional Institution Fort Dix, right in the trailer, front and center, undisguised. Why? Because the editing team wanted you to hear Diddy as a victim. Just a man on a phone. Just a father reaching out to his sons. A sympathetic figure. But here's what slipped past all of them in the editing room. Putting his prison call on tape creates a documented, time-stamped, indisputable audio record of Diddy actively participating in outside communications during an active appeal. Federal prosecutors literally argued during the criminal trial that he was using third-party calls to influence public opinion according to NBC News. So that prison call clip in the trailer? Yeah, that just became Exhibit B for the appeals judge, neatly delivered with promotional artwork attached. Diddy thought that was gonna be a sympathy moment. Nah, my brother, that was a self-snitch wrapped in a bow and disguised as marketing. Forensic detail nobody is flagging. The choice of Zeus Network itself is a smoking gun. Not Hulu. Not Netflix. Not Showtime. Not HBO. Not Paramount Plus. Not Peacock. Not any major outlet that would actually push back on creative decisions or demand editorial independence. They picked Zeus, a network owned and operated by a longtime, documented Diddy associate. That single platform choice tells you everything about editorial control. You don't pick the Homest Network if you're going for raw, unfiltered, journalistic truth. You pick it because you absolutely need Final Cut. You pick it because you can't risk a real producer asking real questions. That's the fundamental problem with the entire Combs camp right now. They don't read between the lines anymore. They ARE the lines. And the freshest forensic crumb of all, Christian King Combs reportedly posted a public reaction to 50's documentary online, then quickly deleted it within hours, while 50's response to him stayed up untouched, becoming the official version of record according to Hot 97. That delete button told us everything. King didn't have the receipts, didn't have the strategy, didn't have the ammunition to back up whatever he originally typed. So he pulled the plug and pretended it never happened. Curtis just stood there with his hands casually in his pockets, watching King self-destruct in real time, not even breaking a sweat. That's the level of psychological warfare we're dealing with right now. Now let's look at how the media itself broke down on this story. So here's where it gets fascinating. The media split clean down the middle on this one, and watching how each outlet framed the same story tells you everything about the cultural moment we're sitting in. TMZ framed it as a sympathy play, leaning hard on the Sons telling their side narrative angle, presenting the entire announcement like a wholesome family healing moment. They went soft. They wanted the clicks from the Combs supporters. Forbes, on the other hand, took a slightly more skeptical lens, putting the entire announcement in the direct context of being a calculated reaction to 50 Cent's Netflix project, basically labeling the whole Zeus thing as competitive narrative warfare instead of organic, soul-bearing storytelling. That framing matters because it signals how serious institutional press views the timing. Then you got the Hollywood Reporter, who went the most clinical route possible. They just stated the cold facts, listed the timeline, and let the audience clock the obvious timing for themselves. Sometimes the most damning coverage is the kind that doesn't say a word and just lays the dates next to each other on the page. And finally, hot new hip-hop went the hardest of them all, leading their coverage with a public backlash, Lemuel Plummer's long-standing personal friendship with Diddy, and basically calling out the obvious conflict of interest before any of the major mainstream outlets even thought to. They earned their stripes on this one. Now the counter-narrative coming out of Diddy's camp? My guy, they are throwing Hail Marys legally and otherwise. The defense team sent a formal cease and desist letter directly to Netflix demanding that the entire docuseries be shelved permanently, claiming it uses stolen footage and labeling it a shameful hit piece, with rumors swirling of a $1 billion defamation suit being prepped behind the scenes according to WSVN and CNN. And Netflix? They didn't even flinch, didn't even blink, didn't even hesitate. They straight up rejected the cease and desist on the spot according to Blunt magazine. That tells you the legal strength of 50's footage is bulletproof. Some Combs supporters online are screaming that 50 obtained that footage illegally, that it was somehow stolen, that there's a criminal angle to how Curtis got his hands on those 140 hours. But here's why that argument completely falls apart under scrutiny. The reports about how Curtis allegedly came into possession of that footage involve him paying off a videographer who had been stiffed financially by Diddy, which is similar to how Lil Rod alleged he was never properly compensated for years of services rendered according to Yahoo News. And if those reports are accurate, and they appear to be, then that footage legally transfers to whoever foots the outstanding bill when no formal contract exists. So that Diddy fans out there screaming stolen footage online are reaching into thin air. Those are the same exact people who genuinely believed wearing matching t-shirts to a federal trial was a winning legal strategy. The receipts don't lie. They never have. They never will. But here's the part nobody in press is brave enough to actually say out loud. Mainstream media wants you to believe this whole situation is just a celebrity beef. Curtis versus the Combs family, popcorn drama, blogs trading reactions, Twitter threads going viral, harmless entertainment to scroll past on your lunch break. Nah, fam. Absolutely not. Here's the real story that nobody in the press has the courage to actually touch. This isn't about a documentary. This isn't about Netflix. This isn't about Zeus. This is about industry politics. And specifically, this is about the controlled demolition of a hip-hop dynasty playing out in real time, on camera, in front of all of us. Diddy used to be untouchable. And let's be honest about why. It wasn't because he made the best music. It wasn't because he had the best day. It wasn't even because he had the best business sense. He was untouchable because he didn't just own music. He owned relationships, label heads, major executives, network owners, magazine editors, journalists, radio programmers, stylists, publicists. That entire interconnected web of influence is collapsing now in slow, painful, public motion, and the Zeus network move is the last desperate gasp of a man trying to use the few friends he has left to rewrite history before the federal system finishes the job. Bro is a puppet on his own strings right now, and the industry isn't pulling for him anymore. The industry is letting him hang. Here's the deeper layer that I haven't seen anyone talk about. Why is this whole campaign happening in 2026, right before the appeal hearings are scheduled to be heard? Because the Combs camp absolutely knows the appellate court works on optics almost as much as it works on law. Judges are humans. Humans consume media. Media shapes perception. If they can flood the cultural conversation with sympathetic narrative, sons, family, redemption arc, prison reform, fatherhood, then maybe, just maybe, they can soften the judge's perception by even 1 or 2%. That's not a documentary. That's a legal strategy disguised as television. That's lawfare wearing a streaming bow tie. And Diddy is playing checkers while Curtis is playing chess. Because the second that Zeus doc actually drops, federal prosecutors get to point at it in court and say, Your Honor, see, he's still coordinating outside communications during his appeal. The very project meant to save him is going to sink him in the most poetic way possible. Now look at the bigger picture, the generational layer that nobody wants to address. Justin and Christian aren't just defending a father. They are defending an inheritance. The Combs name, the bad boy brand, the future endorsement deals, the reunion tours, the publishing splits, the catalog royalties, the masters, the licensing. If Pops becomes officially, permanently synonymous with the worst allegations in modern hip-hop history, that family name becomes radioactive. Brands run from radioactive. Promoters run from radioactive. Streamers run from radioactive. So you tell me, are these sons going on Zeus because they want to share their lived experience? Or are they doing it because their entire financial future depends on Diddy's reputation surviving the next 12 months? Real talk, fam, the Combs sons are watching their net worth bleed out in slow motion, and this Zeus deal is them desperately trying to apply a band-aid to a chest wound. It ain't gonna work. And this all connects to one of the ugliest, most whispered about patterns in hip-hop history. Remember those bars Curtis dropped about Quincy Brown a couple years back? Industry insider Freddie P went on record alleging things about Diddy and Quincy that I won't repeat verbatim because I'm staying monetization safe. But he basically suggested grooming-style behavior toward young men who passed through Diddy's orbit according to Vibe. Freddie compared the alleged patterns directly to what was alleged about R. Kelly, separating young artists from their families, isolating them from outside influence, controlling their movements, managing their access to the world according to Art of Dialogue. The Combs documentary on Zeus completely avoids that entire conversation, and that silence right there is screaming louder than any prison phone call. Because if Pops was clean of those particular allegations, that would have been the first topic addressed in the trailer. Not the last. Not the avoided. The first. Then connect Christian's Grace O'Make civil suit, Yutstu Des, December 2022, allegations of being drugged and sexually assaulted on a vessel directly connected to Sean Combs according to Hollywood Reporter via lawsuit reporting. That timeline we connected. It reveals an alleged pattern where the behavior didn't allegedly stop with Pops. It allegedly bled into the next generation. And the Combs sons really thought a cozy Zeus docuseries about hugging it out, sharing tears, and reflecting on Dad being incarcerated was gonna make all that legal exposure simply disappear from public memory. My guy, that's not strategy. That's denial wearing a director's chair. Industry truth bomb coming right now. Lemuel Plummer is using the exact same playbook other industry insiders have used to clean up their fallen friends. Give them airtime. Frame it as their truth. Spin the narrative. Then walk away when it inevitably backfires. We've literally seen this movie before. Every fallen mogul, every disgraced executive, every cancelled celebrity gets one of these let me explain myself tours. Every single one. And every single one makes it worse without exception. Diddy's team is repeating the same mistakes that ended other careers. We've seen this exact movie play out a dozen times. We know the ending. The credits are already written. This is, at its core, Diddy's desperate, last-ditch attempt to stay culturally relevant in an era that has already moved past him without looking back. The culture has spoken. The receipts have stacked up. The 140 hours of unreleased footage are sitting on a hard drive somewhere in Curtis's possession, locked and loaded. Curtis is grinning. The clock is ticking. That's the truth they don't want you to see clearly. So what happens next? What's the next move in this grand chess game? Let's forecast it. Here's what's most likely going to happen, in my honest assessment based on every receipt we just walked through. When that Zeus docuseries actually drops in 2026, the public is going to do exactly what they've already started doing in the comment sections of every promotional clip. Flood the timeline with disgust, pull screenshots of the most damaging moments, edit them into TikToks, and use them as evidence against Diddy rather than for him. Curtis is going to sit back in his Connecticut estate, repost the worst clips with one of his trademark caption assassinations, 3 or 4 words that detonate like a hand grenade, and let the internet do the rest of the work for him. The Combs sons are going to look desperate, out of touch, tone deaf, and badly advised. The trailer hate is just the appetizer right now. The entree is going to be a full-blown public roast that lasts for weeks. Mark my words on this one. Lemuel Plummer is going to be back on Instagram doing damage control statement number TWO within 48 hours of the doc dropping. Maybe damage control statement number 3 by the end of that same week. And the silence from real, credible journalism outlets? That's going to sting more than any Curtis tweet ever could. Because that silence tells the Combs camp something they haven't accepted yet. Even sympathetic press won't touch this anymore. The industry has quietly closed the door. The hush is the verdict. The hush is the funeral. And the family won't even hear it being delivered. Now, if Curtis decides to drop those 140 hours of unseen footage in direct response to the Zeus docuseries, and trust me, that man is far too petty, too strategic, and too patient to leave that ammunition unused in the chamber, then it's a wrap on the entire Combs PR strategy. Word from multiple sources is that the footage allegedly shows behind-the-scenes coordination, including, per various reports, witness-related conversations and interactions that could draw fresh legal scrutiny from federal authorities according to EU-Rube. If even a small fraction of that material surfaces during the active appeal window, it's not just the documentary that takes a hit, it's Pops' entire legal strategy, his entire public defense, his entire I'm a victim of a witch hunt narrative, all of it goes up in smoke. Watch what happens carefully when Curtis releases that next chapter. Diddy is not ready for what's coming, and neither are the sons. We saw what Curtis did to Ja Rule and Murder Inc., dismantling an entire label single-handedly. We saw what he did to Rick Ross, turning the man's whole biography into a punchline. We saw what he did to virtually every rival he's ever had, from Fat Joe to The Game to dozens of others. The Combs sons don't stand a chance going up against a man who's been actively studying public destruction since the early 2000s as a personal hobby. Curtis isn't a beef rapper. He is a strategist. He's a media architect. He's a psychological operator. And right now, he is fully, completely, terrifyingly locked in. Looking at the bigger picture, here's the long-term move that almost nobody is talking about. This entire moment is going to mark the end of a specific era in hip-hop, the era where being a mogul, owning the labels, and controlling the relationships protected you from accountability. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, people are going to look back at the Zeus docuseries versus The Reckoning matchup as the dividing line between old hip-hop, where the cameras stopped at the studio door, and new hip-hop, where the cameras never stop rolling, ever, under any circumstances. Diddy's legacy damage at this point is permanent. There is no amount of sun-led storytelling, no number of Zeus docuseries, no quantity of cease and desist letters that walks this back. The bad boy logo is going to be a footnote in history books, not a flagship of culture. Meanwhile, every executive in every label, every studio, every network is taking notes. They are quietly updating their NDAs, deleting old DMs, reviewing their inner circles, and praying that the people closest to them are loyal in ways they can prove on paper. Because the central lesson of the 50 versus Diddy saga is brutally simple. The cameras you ran for fun in 2010 are the receipts your enemy will buy in 2025. And the Combs sons. They are not just defending a father in this fight. They are watching their entire future get rewritten in real time, page by page, by people they can't control. Justin's name is already in civil filings tied to the Chalice Studios shooting, according to USA Today. Christian's name is tied to a yacht assault civil case, according to lawsuit reporting. So this Zeus doc isn't just bad strategy. It's a spotlight being aimed directly at every legal liability the family was trying to keep tucked into the shadows. And they walked toward that spotlight on purpose, with cameras rolling, with prison phone calls in the rollout, with a friend of Pop's cutting the final edit. Whatever happens in 2026, one thing is already crystal clear from where we're sitting today. Diddy already lost this war. The verdict came in. The sentence came down. The appeal is throwing rocks at a battleship. The only real question left now is how many people he ends up dragging down with him on his way out. And from where I'm sitting, the list is growing every single week, every single news cycle, every single time somebody in his orbit decides to pick up the phone and call Curtis instead of him. That's the truth. That's the receipts. That's the reckoning. And it's only just getting started. Now you see it. This ain't just drama. This is a full collapse happening in real time. And trust me, this story is far from over. If you made it this far, hit that like, subscribe, and stay locked in. Because the next drop, it's gonna be even crazier. Go watch the next video right here. You're not ready for what's coming.